So I've been saying that the Greek gods and the Roman gods were just morally awful, and that's true. But actually, they actually aren't that bad. Well, they are bad, but they're not that bad. Well, like all things historical, it's complicated. So let me muddy the waters, the very waters I've created for the last few videos. I want to divide up the Greek thought on religion and morality in three phases. Phase one, call that Homer, the ancient phase. Homer, the great blind poet, wrote the Iliad, the Odyssey, and in his books, his poems, those gods appear to be violent, fickle, and driven by ego and pride. They are amoral deities. They have no sense of morality. They're like a terrible dysfunctional family fighting with one another all the time, and humans are merely the pawns to get destroyed in the process. I mean, Homer is reflecting the mind of an ancient and old world. We don't have dates for Homer, but he could have lived anywhere from 750 to 1200 BC. Okay, that's phase one. Let's go into what I call phase two, the classical poets. I'm going to talk about Sophocles. Now, Sophocles lived from 496 to 406 BC. Um, we could say he lived somewhere 200 to 70 years after Homer. I mean, his depiction of the gods regarding the morality was different from Homer, which I'll get to later on. Phase three, the philosophers, which I'll get to. Okay, so let's start with phase one, the poets. Let's talk about Antigone by Sophocles. The two sons of Oedipus, Eteocles and Polynices, have died fighting against one another in a war. Their uncle Creon, who was a king of Thebes, declares that the body of Polynices, who fought against his native city of Thebes, will not be given burial rights, but be left to rot, a warning to all traitors, as he was a traitor. Now, Creon further decrees that anyone who does try to bury Polynices will be punished by death. Now, Oedipus's daughter, Antigone, is grieving and defiant. She vows that she will bury and honor the body of Polynices, and this part is key. She declares that the burial traditions are the unwritten law of the gods and are more important than the decrees of one man, even if he's a king. She will not break the laws of the gods just to follow Creon's unjust law. Now Creon responds that she will die for her disobedience to the laws of the city. And Creon is as unyielding in his allegiance to the rule of law as Antigone is to the unwritten traditional rules of the gods. Now the rest of the story is just awful, death and brokenness, all the stuff of Greek tragedies. And this is what I find really fascinating and interesting about Antigone. There is this unwritten moral law, that is this transcendent eternal law that's beyond culture and human will and desire. And that's what she clings on to, that's what she refers to. It's like the code of the universe. And how does Antigone know this law? I mean, the audience who's watching the play clearly knows this law as well, this moral fabric that, you have to obey. They must know it by tradition or some kind of intuition. But it is a moral law, it is consistent, and it is grounded in the gods, the nature of the gods, the will of the gods. Something is changing in the Greek minds. Sophocles is more or less living around the same time as the Greek philosopher Xenophon. And Xenophon is a less famous student of Socrates. Now, Xenophon argues, now he's a playwright, Xenophon is a philosopher, and Xenophon is arguing that you have to respect this divine order of nature, this intelligence that is discernible in the universe. And he calls it a nous, and it reflects a mind of God. And this nous directs everybody. If you follow this nous, it will direct you towards God. Now later, Aristotle will famously describe this God as the unmoved mover. That is the order and structure that holds and binds a world together. It seems to me it's analogous to mathematics or physics or like the grand unified theory in physics. So maybe that's where Antigone gets her understanding of the moral law of the gods. Not that she understands physics, but this kind of structure of the world that's observable and discernible by the human mind. And from that you get the laws of the world, or the nous, the moral law. But Aristotle's God, by definition, the unmoved mover, is unmoved, meaning you can't move him. You can't plead with him. You can't beg this God to change his will, to have pity upon you. This unmoved mover God of Aristotle, he'll never love you. He'll never have compassion or pity upon you. doesn't care about you. You pray to this God, he can't listen to you. And even if he did, he wouldn't move anyway. After all, he is the unmoved mover. So Homer's gods are crazy, but they're personal. Aristotle's God is the epitome of logic and reason, but he's not personal. But Elohim, he's interesting, even strange, even paradoxical. He's personal and loving, but he's also logical and reasonable. The Apostle John will later call him the Logos, which is divine reason itself. And I think that's interesting.